Hello. Today we're going to be putting together a watch. I had some old watch parts laying around and I figured that I'd go ahead and use them to do a little build here. What got me started thinking about this is I've got this Seiko NH35 movement that I had planned on using on a different build a while back, but I never got around to it. And it had just been kind of sitting around. And I was working on another NH35 movement, which started me thinking about this NH35 movement. So I thought I would go ahead and see if I had enough parts laying around to put together a watch. And it turns out I do. I've got a case and crystal set that I'll go over in just a moment. And I've got a watch face that I planned on using on a different build. And then I've also got some watch hands that came from Seiko dive watch that I previously took apart. So I'll be using all these things, and I'll be putting everything eventually on a NATO strap, and it'll look pretty similar to if you saw the video of my steel dive build. It'll look pretty similar to the steel dive. This steel dive is on a Bond strap, James Bond strap. And the steel dive is a good watch. It comes with an NH35 movement. The case is a pretty standard SKX 007 case, which fits the NH35 movement. And so it's going to look pretty similar. I just happen to like this style of watch quite a lot. And it's a pretty easy one to build, and it's a pretty easy one to mod. And I also have a new bezel insert here. So the first step, if you're going to be doing one of these, well, the first step that I'm going to do is prep the case. So let me move the movement out of the way. Now, I had already opened up this case. I thought I was, for a previous build, I thought I was going to need the gasket for the crystal for something else. Turns out I didn't need the gasket. So I have everything complete, but I did get into the case. So as I mentioned before, this is a case for an this isn't an actual Seiko case, but it's the same style of case as the SKX 007, which is a really popular style of case. I really like it. I think it's a very, very robust looking case, and it's a good style. So I had previously taken off the bezel, and I'm going to set that aside for now because I don't need that for right now. And then I've got all the click attachments here, the metal ring that seats the bezel, and the click spring here. But what I want is to take the case, because I want to take the crystal out. So it's a sapphire crystal. I had previously shown in the steel dive video the crystal, and I talked about how I removed the Cyclops. And I removed the Cyclops by using a spatula over heat. So that's what I'm going to go do now. And the way I do it is I take a regular kitchen spatula and I put the bezel in, like that, and then I put it over the stove burner, and within a few minutes the glue, the adhesive on the Cyclops liquefies and the Cyclops just slides off. So as I mentioned on that video, I do not accept responsibility for anyone trying this at home. This is something that I do. There are a lot of different ways to remove the bezel. If you choose to use the stove method, you use it completely at your own risk. I take no responsibility. But this is how I do it. I find it's a very quick way, and the heat doesn't damage the sapphire crystal. But before I do that, I want to look at some other components of the case. So this particular case comes with a screw down crown. The crown stem doesn't come with the crown stem, but that's okay. I have a crown stem for NH35 movement. In fact, I think this particular movement comes with a stem. Yeah, this one comes with a stem. So we'll probably have to cut that stem down, but that's all right. That's a pretty easy thing to do. And then this particular case, it also has a transparent back. So usually I'm not really a big fan of these, especially if the movement is not really a visually interesting movement. But this is the case I have, and so I'll use this case. And it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It just screws on in. And then this is the case. Now these cases, it's got a lot of oil, lubricating oil from the bezel ring and oil from my hands. Of course, before I put the movement in and before I get it all ready to go, I'm going to clean it up a lot. In this case, because I haven't used it, it still has the tape, the protective tape, which I'll take off now before I forget. I always have a habit of forgetting that. All right, protective tape is off, and the case is ready to be cleaned. The bezel I'll clean by hand because it already has the adhesive tape for the bezel insert. So I don't want that to come undone. So I'll clean this by hand. But for right now, what I want to do is remove the Cyclops. So I'll come back and we'll pick up where I left off from the Cyclops removal. Okay, so the crystal is off, and you can see it here on my oven mitt. The crystal is really hot. It's really, really hot. So I leave it here to cool, and I usually leave it to cool about 10 or 15 minutes. Don't run cold water over it because that sudden change from heat to cold could crack it. So just let it air cool. I'm in no hurry. I can just barely touch it right now, and it's been about 5 minutes that I popped the Cyclops off, so it has to be cleaned up too. The irritating noise that you're hearing, besides my voice, is the cleaning machine, and I'm currently cleaning the watch back and the watch case. Again, I really like these SKX007 cases. I like the way they look. I think they're very robust. They're very durable. They can really take a beating. I've been modding these cases for a long time, and they're great. I really like them. Okay, now this is starting to get to the point where I can handle it with my hand. And you can see it's really dirty, but we're going to clean it up. In fact, I'm going to clean it up, and I'm even going to throw it in here for the second cycle. Okay, here we are back at the workstation, And we have the case nice and clean out of the cleaning machine. And I've already put in the plastic gasket in there, the plastic washer. That seats in. It just seats in, sets in there. You want to make sure that this is in before you put your crystal in. So here's the crystal, and I tried to clean it up as much as possible. It's okay if it still has a few fingerprints on it. That's all going to get cleaned up before the final assembly. And I just wanted to point out that here is the Cyclops over here. And the Cyclops is fine. There's no damage to the Cyclops. The Cyclops has been saved. If, in fact, I have a whole bunch of Cyclopses from crystals that I've taken the Cyclops off of. I usually save them. I don't know. Sometimes maybe I'll get an inclination to put a Cyclops on a watch. I doubt it. That's never happened, but I will add this to my collection of Cyclopses. When you take the crystal and clean it, there'll still be the residue of the adhesive on the crystal. And all I do with that is I take a cotton swab with some rubbing alcohol, and in less than a minute the adhesive's off and it cleans up. So as you can see, there's no damage to the crystal, especially a sapphire crystal. It can handle the heat. But one question I get asked sometimes is, how do I dry my parts after I take them out of the cleaner? So what I do is I put them in the oven. I set the oven for 170. I put the parts on a baking tray. I put them in. I keep it in for 5 minutes. No more, no less. 5 minutes. It dries up enough of the water. And then I come through, and usually small holes like this, I'll go through with either compressed air, or I'll take a little Rodico. So Rodico is a great useful tool to have. And I will Rodico out the holes, and same thing with the crown stem hole, and just make sure it's dry. So, and also, like I said, I use compressed air as well. So again, if you use this technique, it involves heat, it involves the oven, it involves an oven burner. That's just something that I do. There are techniques that don't involve heat at all. So now we're going to put the crystal on to the case. How do we do that? We'll just put the crystal on for now and just kind of seat it on. Make sure it's nice and even. There we go. And then I'm going to get my tool. And this is nothing fancy. If you watch some channels, and I'm thinking of Marshall over at Wristwatch Revival, Marshall has a lot of really nice watchmaking tools. He's very, very skilled. It's a great channel to watch. I'll oftentimes just get a cup of coffee and sit and watch his videos. And one thing I'm very envious of is his tool collection. So I have this janky little guy here. I have different size inserts. Oftentimes I'll use a square insert for the base. I find that a square insert fits the base of these cases very well. And then I'll use the top press crystal, or the top press piece is just big enough to go over the outer edge of the crystal. Sometimes I'll also use a flat piece to press down on these crystals. Since these crystals are flat, they're not domed, and they are sapphire, so they're pretty they're pretty tolerant of being pressed on. So I'll start with this one. We'll start with this one, and then we'll probably move to a flat one as well. So I usually just, after the crystal's been set, came undone. It's kind of a tight squeeze in there. So I'll get that just nice and even. You want it even so that it applies even pressure. And you see I'm not wearing any gloves or anything because at this point I know I'm going to clean this all over again, so I'm not really too concerned about my hand cleanliness. We're just going to kind of press that guy in there. And after the first pressing, I can see that it's in. I mean, as you can see, it's in there. It needs to be in a little bit better. So I'm going to dig through my collection of presses here, and I'll use this guy here. It's flat, and you see that I'm not covering the top of the crystal. You can put something protective over the top of the crystal. Maybe I will for this one. Maybe I'll just put down a little something to protect it, but you don't really need to. In fact, let's see if I can drape this, if I have enough room to drape this in. There we go. And so this is going to be a lot more even because of the flatness. And I usually just press it down and hold it for a bit. Let's see how that looks. That doesn't look too bad. That looks pretty good. It's in there pretty well. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, so this is how I put the crystal back in after removing the Cyclops. And as you can see, I think it looks a lot nicer. I think it's a cleaner look, especially since the face that I'm using, the watch face that I'm using, doesn't have a day or date. It's just going to be just a regular black face with raised indices. And that's how I like it, nice and simple. All right, in the next video, we'll look at installing the NH35 movement and some of the things we have to do to get the movement in. It's not a difficult thing to do, but there are some things to be aware of. So we'll look at that next time. Thank you.